Does he touch you? Does he touch you where it hurts?
Aaliyah Monroe learned early how to make pain invisible. It started with posture. The way she held her shoulders back even when something inside her chest ached. The way she kept her chin level, her gaze steady, her steps unhurried. Pain, she discovered, lost its power when it wasn't acknowledged, when it wasn't invited to sit at the table. By the time she was 23, she had perfected the art. At the elite private hospital in Seoul where she worked, Aaliyah was known for her calm. VIP patients requested her by name, though many of them never quite understood why. Some thought it was her competence, her precise hands, her flawless charting, her ability to anticipate needs before they were spoken. Others thought it was her voice. Low, smooth, a British lilt softened by Jamaican warmth. When she spoke, even rushed, executives slowed down. What no one saw were the bruises beneath her uniform, the faint yellow-purple shadows she layered concealer over with almost clinical precision. The ache she felt when she lifted her arms too high, when she turned too quickly, when fingers pressed just a little too firmly into her skin during routine exams. She made sure no one noticed, especially not him. Terrence liked things quiet, controlled, predictable. He liked Aaliyah best when she didn't ask questions, when she didn't stay late at work, when she didn't wear her hair loose or speak too brightly on the phone. He said he worried. He said Seoul was dangerous. He said men noticed her. Sometimes his hands lingered too long. Sometimes they tightened. Sometimes he apologized afterward. Aaliyah learned to nod, to accept, to endure. On the morning everything changed, she arrived at the hospital with a bruise blooming beneath her collarbone, dark and tender. She chose a higher neckline, adjusted her posture, and told herself she had survived worse. The hospital's VIP wing hummed with its usual quiet urgency. Polished floors, low voices, the faint scent of antiseptic and expensive cologne. Aaliyah moved through it with practiced grace, her glass-smooth skin luminous under the lights, her cat-shaped eyes alert and focused. She didn't know the hospital's silent investor was scheduled to arrive that day. She only knew the air felt different. It began as a subtle shift. Security stood straighter. Administrators spoke more carefully. Dr. Seo Yoon-hee paused mid-sentence when a message appeared on her tablet, her expression tightening just slightly before smoothing again. "Aaliyah," Dr. Seo said later, her voice measured, "you'll be assisting in the executive suite this afternoon." Aaliyah nodded. Of course. No explanation followed. None was needed. The executive suite was reserved for patients whose names never appeared on records, whose bills were settled without invoices. Power had its own protocols. When Aaliyah entered the suite, she felt him before she saw him. Kang Min-jae stood near the window, his back to the room, hands loosely clasped behind him. He was tall, broad-shouldered without bulk, still as stone. The tailored dark suit he wore fit him like intent rather than fabric. He turned when the door closed. His gaze met hers, calm and unhurried, and something in her chest tightened. Not fear, not desire, but awareness. As if every instinct she had leaned forward at once. "Good afternoon," he said. His voice was low, precise, Korean softened by years of control rather than warmth. "Good afternoon, sir," Aaliyah replied, bowing slightly in respect, her accent wrapping around the words like velvet. His eyes didn't leave her face. She felt the assessment immediately, not crude, not invasive, but thorough. The way her shoulders were held, the way she favored one side when she reached for the tray, the faint tension in her breath. Most men noticed her beauty. Min-jae noticed everything else. They worked in silence at first. Aaliyah moved efficiently, her hands steady despite the heat building beneath his attention. She could feel him near her without him touching her. Too close, always just inside her space. When she leaned to adjust the IV, her sleeve shifted. The bruise showed, not fully, just enough. She felt the moment he saw it like a breath held too long. "Does it hurt?" he asked softly. "When you lift your arm like that?" The question was neutral, almost clinical, but Aaliyah froze. Her training told her to answer automatically. Her survival instinct told her to lie. "It's nothing," she said lightly. "Just clumsy." Min-jae didn't respond right away. He stepped closer, not into her space, but near enough that she could smell his cologne, dark and understated. Near enough that she could feel the weight of his presence without it pressing on her. "Does he touch you?" he asked quietly. "Where it hurts." The room seemed to narrow around them. Aaliyah's breath caught before she could stop it. No one had ever asked her that before. Not directly. Not without accusation or pity or disbelief. Not with that tone, controlled, curious, deadly calm. Her cat-shaped eyes lifted to his, dark and wide. For a moment, she considered denying it. Then she thought of Terrence's voice the night before, thought of the way the bruise had bloomed under his fingers, thought of how tired she was. Her silence was answer enough. Min-jae's gaze sharpened, not with anger, but with focus, like a blade being aligned. "Do you want me?" he asked, his voice dropping just enough to vibrate against her skin, "to make him stop?" The words were dangerous, intimate, not a threat, an offer. Aaliyah swallowed. Her heart hammered, not with fear, but with something far more terrifying. Hope. Her voice wavered, then steadied. "I don't know what that would cost." Min-jae studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he stepped back, giving her space again. "Nothing," he said. "That you cannot afford." The door opened then, the moment shattered by routine. Dr. Seo returned with paperwork, her expression carefully blank. The world resumed its rhythm. But Aaliyah knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that something irreversible had begun. As she left the suite, she felt Min-jae's gaze on her back. Not possessive, protective. And for the first time in years, Aaliyah Monroe wondered what it might feel like to stop hiding. Aaliyah didn't sleep that night. She lay on her side in the narrow apartment she shared with Terrence, listening to the rhythm of his breathing beside her. Even in sleep, his presence felt heavy, territorial. One arm flung across the bed as if to mark ownership, fingers twitching occasionally like he was still gripping something. Her body remembered before her mind allowed it to. The bruise beneath her collarbone throbbed faintly, a dull echo of the night before. But it wasn't Terrence's touch that kept her awake. It was the question. Does he touch you where it hurts? No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not gently, not without judgment, not with such terrifying certainty that the answer mattered. She stared at the ceiling until dawn crept in through the thin curtains, painting the room in gray. When Terrence finally stirred, she slipped out of bed silently, already reaching for the mask she wore so well. At the hospital, she was impeccable, her uniform crisp, her hair pulled back tight, curls restrained into submission, concealer layered perfectly over bruised skin. Her glass-smooth complexion glowed beneath the fluorescent lights, cat-shaped eyes, alert, focused, unreadable. Dr. Seo watched her more closely than usual. "You're early," the doctor noted. Aaliyah smiled faintly. The dimples appeared, soft and disarming. "Couldn't sleep." Dr. Seo nodded, but her gaze lingered just a second too long on Aaliyah's neck. On the way, she rolled her shoulders as if easing stiffness. Institutional silence had a face, and Dr. Seo wore it well. The executive suite remained quiet throughout the morning. No sign of Kang Min-jae, no summons, no message. Aaliyah told herself that was a relief. Her body disagreed. She felt it in the way her breath caught whenever footsteps echoed behind her, in the way her awareness stretched, searching, in the strange warmth that settled low in her abdomen whenever she remembered his voice. Low, measured, intimate, without touching. By late afternoon, her nerves were taut. She was finishing a chart when Han Dae-sung appeared at the nurse's station. He didn't announce himself. He simply existed there suddenly, broad and immovable, scar-tracing the line of his jaw. His presence bent the space around him, quieting conversation without effort. "Miss Monroe," he said calmly, "Mr. Kang would like a word." Her pulse spiked. Dr. Seo looked up, expression carefully neutral. "Is this medical?" Han's gaze flicked to the doctor, then back to Aaliyah. "Private." Aaliyah nodded once, already standing. The executive suite felt different this time. The lights were dimmer, the air warmer. Min-jae stood near the table, jacket removed, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal strong forearms. His posture was relaxed, but nothing about him was casual. "You came," he said. "I was asked to." Aaliyah replied softly. A corner of his mouth curved. "You could have refused." She met his gaze. "I didn't want to." The admission hung between them, charged and fragile. He gestured to the chair across from him. She sat, smoothing her uniform over her hips, acutely aware of how small movements drew his attention. He didn't stare, but she felt seen. Her breath, her tension, the way her knees pressed together. "Did he hurt you again?" Min-jae asked. The directness sent a shiver through her. "No," she said truthfully. "Not yet." Min-jae leaned back slightly, studying her face. "Yet," he repeated, her fingers curled into her lap. "He's careful. When he wants to be. That's when men like him are most dangerous." She swallowed. "You speak as if you know him." "I know his type." Silence settled again, thick and intimate. Min-jae stood slowly and moved closer, not looming, not threatening, just enough that his presence wrapped around her awareness. He stopped in front of her, leaving space, always space. "Look at me," he said quietly. She did. His eyes were calm, predatory in their stillness. "You are not weak," he said. "You are enduring. There is a difference." Her throat tightened. "You hide bruises," he continued, "but you don't hide fear as well as you think." "I manage," she whispered. He inclined his head. "For now." His hand lifted, not touching her but hovering near her arm, close enough that heat radiated. She felt every nerve wake, every instinct screaming at the proximity. "If I intervene," he said, voice low, "your life will change." She nodded. "I know." "You will not belong to me," he continued calmly, "but you will be protected completely." Her breath shook. "And what do you want?" Min-jae's gaze dropped briefly to her lips, her pulse, the faint tremor in her hands, before returning to her eyes. "I want you safe," he said, "and I want you honest." The honesty cost her everything. "He scares me," she said, "and I'm tired of pretending he doesn't." Min-jae straightened, decisions settling over him like armor. "Then we begin," he said. That night, Aaliyah returned home with a strange sense of inevitability curling in her chest. Terrence barely looked up when she entered, distracted, irritated. "You're late," he snapped. She met his gaze steadily. "Yes," she said. Something shifted in his eyes. Confusion, irritation, the faintest crack in control. Aaliyah went to bed alone, fully dressed, heart racing, not with fear, but anticipation. Because somewhere in the city, a man who noticed everything had decided she mattered. And men like Kang Min-jae did not decide lightly. The first sign that things were changing came quietly. Aaliyah noticed it the next morning, standing at the sink brushing her teeth while Terrence paced behind her, irritated about something she hadn't done, something she couldn't fix. His voice rose, sharp and needling, but his hands stayed to himself. For the first time in months, he hesitated. It was subtle. A pause before stepping too close. A glance at his phone that lingered a second longer than necessary. A tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. Predators sensed shifts in power before anyone else did. Aaliyah said nothing. She dressed, left for work, and carried the knowledge with her like a secret weapon tucked beneath her ribs. At the hospital, Han Dae-sung was already there. Not hovering, not obvious, just present. Near enough to be seen if one knew where to look, invisible to everyone else. When Aaliyah passed him in the corridor, he gave a slight nod. No words, no reassurance. Still, her spine straightened. The executive suite remained empty until late afternoon. When Min-jae arrived, there was no announcement, no entourage, just the quiet awareness of him entering the floor the way conversations softened without instruction. Aaliyah felt him before she saw him again. She was charting when his reflection appeared faintly in the glass partition. tall, still, watching. "You're limping," he said. She turned, startled despite herself. "It's nothing." "That's the second time you've said that to me," Min-jae replied evenly, "and the second time you've been wrong." Heat flushed her cheeks. Not embarrassment, but something far more intimate. Being seen without being stripped bare. "I slept badly," she offered. He studied her for a moment, then gestured toward the suite. "Walk with me." They moved side by side down the quiet corridor. His stride matched hers without effort, never forcing her to hurry, never slowing her down. She was acutely aware of the contrast between them, her soft curves beneath fabric, his contained strength beside her. Inside the suite, he poured tea himself. A deliberate choice. "Sit," he said. She did. "You haven't told him," he said, not asking. Aaliyah wrapped her fingers around the warm cup. "Not yet." "Why?" She considered the question carefully. "Because once I do, there's no going back." Min-jae nodded. "Correct." Silence stretched. Not uncomfortable, expectant. "Does he know where you work?" he asked. "Yes." "Does he come here?" "No, he doesn't like hospitals." A flicker of something dark crossed Min-jae's eyes. Satisfaction, perhaps. Or calculation. "He will," Min-jae said calmly. "Soon." Her pulse quickened. "You're certain?" "Yes." She looked at him then, really looked at him, at the stillness that radiated power, at the restraint that made it dangerous. "And if he does?" Min-jae's gaze held hers. "Then he will understand what it means to touch what is not his." The words settled low in her body, heavy with implication, not sexual, not violent, territorial. Her breath slowed deliberately. "And what about me?" "What about you?" he echoed. "If you protect me," she said carefully, "what do you expect in return?" Min-jae leaned forward slightly, forearms resting on his knees, closing the distance just enough that the air between them tightened. "I expect you to stop shrinking," he said. "I expect you to look at me when you speak. I expect honesty even when it trembles." Her lips parted. "I expect," he continued, voice softer now, "that you choose me with your eyes before you ever choose me with your body." A shiver traced her spine. "That's all?" she whispered. "For now." That night, Terrence came home late. He was agitated, restless, his charm cracking at the edges. He paced the apartment, muttering about men who thought they were untouchable, about people who didn't know their place. Aaliyah watched him from the couch, quiet, composed. When he finally turned on her, his voice sharp with accusation, she didn't flinch. "You think you're better than me now?" he snapped. She stood slowly, met his gaze. "No," she said, "I think I'm done being afraid of you." The silence that followed was deafening. Terrence's eyes flicked, once, twice, to the door, to the windows, to his phone. Fear crept in where control used to live. Aaliyah walked past him without another word, locking herself in the bedroom. Her heart raced, but it wasn't panic driving it. It was certainty. Her phone buzzed moments later. Unknown number. "Are you safe?" She stared at the screen, then typed back with steady fingers. "For now." The reply came almost instantly. "Good. Sleep." She did. And for the first time in years, she slept without dreaming of bruises. The confrontation came sooner than Min-jae predicted. It happened 3 nights later. Aaliyah was leaving the hospital after a late shift. The city already cooled into neon reflections and quiet streets. Her heels clicked softly against the polished stone outside the private entrance when a familiar voice cut through the air. "Aaliyah." Her body reacted before her mind did. Muscles tightening, breath locking. But she didn't turn immediately. Terrence stood near the curb, leaning against a car that didn't belong to him. His smile was practiced, too wide, the way it always was when he wanted control back. "You didn't answer your phone," he said. She faced him slowly. "I was working." "That's funny," he replied, eyes sweeping over the building, "because I came by earlier. They said you weren't on shift." "A test?" Aaliyah kept her expression smooth. "Schedules change." He stepped closer. Too close. "You've been acting different," he murmured. "Cold, distant, like you think you've got backup." Her pulse thudded, but she didn't step away. "I don't need backup," she said quietly. "I need peace." Terrence laughed, low and humorless. "You think you get to decide that?" Before she could answer, the streetlight shifted. A black sedan rolled to a silent stop behind Terrence. The door opened. Kang Min-jae stepped out. No rush. No announcement. Just presence. Terrence turned, irritation flickering into confusion, then unease. Min-jae didn't look at him immediately. His attention went to Aaliyah first, checking her face, her posture, the distance between them. "Did he touch you?" Min-jae asked. The question wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "No," she answered. Min-jae nodded once. Then his gaze moved to Terrence. "You're standing very close to something that no longer belongs to you," Min-jae said calmly. Terrence scoffed. "Who the hell are you?" Min-jae smiled faintly, not friendly. Final. "The man who noticed," he replied. "The man who listened, the man who does not repeat himself." Terrence's jaw tightened. "This is between me and my girl." Min-jae took one step forward. "She stopped being yours the moment you raised your hand," he said. "You just didn't realize it yet." The air thickened. Terrence's bravado cracked, replaced by something rawer. Fear, masked as anger. "You threatening me?" Min-jae tilted his head slightly. "No." A beat. "I'm explaining the future." Terrence's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced down instinctively. Whatever he saw drained the color from his face. Min-jae leaned in just enough for Terrence to hear him, and only him. "You will leave," he said quietly. "You will forget her address, you will forget her schedule, and you will be grateful I noticed you before someone less patient did." Terrence swallowed hard. "This city," Min-jae continued, "has a way of swallowing men who don't understand boundaries." Terrence stepped back, then another step. Pride fought fear, and lost. "This isn't over," he muttered. Min-jae's eyes flicked briefly to Han Dae-sung, who stood across the street watching without expression. "It is," Min-jae said. Terrence got into his car and drove away without looking back. Silence settled. Aaliyah realized she was shaking only when Min-jae's coat brushed her arm as he turned toward her. "Come with me," he said. She didn't hesitate. Inside the car, the city slid past in blurred lights. Min-jae didn't touch her, didn't speak. He let the quiet do the work. When they arrived at his residence, she followed him inside, heart racing for an entirely different reason now. "You're safe here," he said finally. "Tonight." She looked up at him. "And tomorrow?" He stepped closer. Close enough that she could feel the heat of him, the restraint humming beneath the surface. "Tomorrow," he said, "you decide how much of your life you want back." Her voice was barely audible. "And you?" Min-jae's eyes darkened just slightly. "I'm already involved," he replied. "The question is whether you want me close, or watching from a distance." The tension between them was electric, coiled, dangerous in the best way. Aaliyah inhaled slowly. "Stay," she said. Min-jae didn't touch her, he simply nodded. Aaliyah didn't sleep much that night, not because she was afraid, because every nerve in her body felt awake. Min-jae gave her one of the guest rooms, tasteful, quiet, deliberately impersonal. A boundary? A statement? He didn't follow her inside, didn't linger in the doorway, didn't test her resolve. That restraint stayed with her longer than any touch ever had. She lay on crisp sheets, staring at the ceiling, replaying the way his voice had sounded outside the hospital. Calm. Absolute. As if the world bent around his decisions rather than the other way around. By morning, something in her had settled. At the hospital, whispers followed her, not gossip. Curiosity. Terrence had come asking questions the previous day. Loud ones, desperate ones. Then disappeared just as suddenly. Dr. Seo Yoon-hee watched Aaliyah more closely than usual during rounds, her eyes flicking briefly to the faint yellow bruise peeking above Aaliyah's collar before moving on without comment. Institutional silence. But Min-jae was not silent. He didn't come to the hospital that day. Instead, Han Dae-sung appeared mid-afternoon, handing Aaliyah a slim envelope in the staff lounge without a word. Inside was a single key card and a note written in clean, precise handwriting. You don't heal where you were hurt. Come when you're ready. The address was downtown, discreet, secure. Aaliyah folded the note carefully, heart thudding, not with fear, but with anticipation. That evening, she packed a small bag. Terrence didn't come home. She didn't check her phone for his messages. She went to the address. The apartment Min-jae had prepared for her was nothing like the penthouse she'd briefly seen. Softer, warmer, floor-to-ceiling windows with sheer curtains that filtered the city into a glow. Fresh flowers on the counter, new sheets folded neatly on the bed. A place meant for living, not hiding. Min-jae was already there. He stood near the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, just enough to reveal forearms marked with faint scars, old, deliberate, earned. You came, he said. Yes. He turned to face her fully, took her in, no hunger in his eyes, only focus. Did he contact you? He asked. No. Good. She set her bag down. You're very confident. I'm thorough. She exhaled, then lifted her chin. What happens now? Min-jae stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. Now, he said, voice low, you tell me what you need. The question stunned her more than any threat ever had. She swallowed. I don't know how to exist without being watched. His gaze softened, not weak, but understanding. Then we start there. He raised his hand slowly, giving her time, watching her reaction. When his fingers brushed her wrist, it was gentle, grounding. Does this hurt? He asked. No? Good. Tell me if it does. Her breath hitched, not from fear, but from the intimacy of being asked. He didn't kiss her, didn't pull her close. He simply rested his forehead against hers for a moment, sharing space, breath, presence. You are not broken, he said quietly. You are restrained. There is a difference. Her eyes burned. I don't want to be small anymore, she whispered. Min-jae's voice dropped, steady and sure. Then don't be. He stepped back, giving her the room again. Rest tonight, he said. Tomorrow we begin dismantling the damage. Carefully. On your terms. Aaliyah watched him walk away, heart racing, not because she was losing control, but because for the first time she was gaining it. And she knew, deep in her bones, that once Min-jae chose to protect something, he did not let go. Morning arrived without violence. That alone felt revolutionary. Aaliyah woke to soft light filtering through sheer curtains, the city muted and distant. For a moment, she lay still, listening for raised voices, for footsteps outside the door, for the familiar knot of dread that usually greeted her before consciousness fully formed. Nothing came. Her body relaxed slowly, cautiously, as if afraid this calm might vanish if she acknowledged it too quickly. She showered, letting warm water run over skin that was finally unbraced, finally unguarded. The bruises were still there, yellowing now, fading, but they no longer felt like countdowns. They felt like evidence of something ending. When she stepped into the living area, Min-jae was already awake. He stood at the counter preparing coffee with unhurried precision, dressed simply in dark trousers and a crisp shirt. No suit, no armor, just controlled ease. You slept? He observed. Yes. He handed her a cup, their fingers brushed. He withdrew immediately, watching her reaction rather than claiming the moment. Did you dream? He asked. She considered. Not for the first time in a long while. He nodded as if that mattered. They sat across from each other, the space between them deliberate. The quiet wasn't awkward. It felt intentional, like the pause before something important. I spoke with your hospital administration, Min-jae said. Your schedule will change, fewer night shifts, more autonomy. Her brows knit. I didn't ask for... I know. He interrupted gently. You didn't ask. That's why it matters that you can refuse. She met his gaze. And can I? Yes. The word landed solidly. Real. She exhaled. Then, I'll accept. A corner of his mouth lifted. Not a smile, but approval. Later that day, as they drove through the city, Aaliyah watched Seoul pass by with new eyes. She had lived here for years, yet always as if half hidden, half braced. Now the city felt different, sharper, more vivid. They stopped at a quiet medical office, not a hospital. "This is not for treatment," Min Jae said as they entered. "This is documentation." Her stomach tightened. He noticed. "You are in control. We stop if you say so." She nodded. Inside, a woman physician examined her professionally, clinically. Notes were taken, photos secured, no questions asked beyond consent. When it was done, Aaliyah felt oddly lighter, as if the pain had finally been translated into something external, something no longer living only in her body. Back in the car, she stared out the window. "You didn't watch," she said quietly. Min Jae glanced at her. "I didn't need to? Why?" "Because what happened to you is not mine to consume," he replied. "Only to address." The words sent a tremor through her chest. That evening, as the city darkened again, Min Jae stood behind her on the balcony, close enough that she could feel his presence, not touching, not crowding. "You don't belong to me," he said softly, "but if you choose to stand beside me, I will not let anyone harm you again." Her voice was barely a whisper. "And if I choose myself?" His answer came without hesitation. "Then I will respect you more." The truth of that settled deep, warm, and dangerous all at once. Aaliyah closed her eyes, breathing him in, not his scent, not his body, but his certainty. For the first time, desire didn't feel like surrender. It felt like power. The city changed its posture when Min Jae decided something was finished. Aaliyah felt it before she saw it. The messages stopped. The unknown numbers, the uneasy sense of being followed when she walked alone. Even the hospital felt different, staff more deferential, security more visible, corridors quieter around her. Power had shifted. She didn't ask how, she didn't need to. Instead, she focused on herself. On relearning what it felt like to move without bracing, to speak without measuring consequences, to let silence exist without fearing what might fill it. Min Jae never rushed her. He never crossed a boundary she didn't invite him to approach. That, more than anything, unsettled her. One evening, she found herself in his kitchen again, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, helping him prepare dinner. The domestic simplicity of it felt surreal. This man, feared, whispered about, dangerous in ways she fully understood, handled ingredients with care, knife strokes precise and unhurried. "You're watching me," he said without looking up. "I'm learning," she replied. He glanced at her then, eyes sharp but calm. "What?" "How you hold control without squeezing," she said. "Terrence always needed to prove it." Min Jae set the knife down slowly. "Men who need to prove power rarely have it." The words stayed with her as they ate. Later, they stood on the balcony, city lights reflecting in the glass. The air was warm, still. "Come here," he said quietly. She did. He stood behind her, not touching. Not yet. His presence wrapped around her like a held breath. "Tell me if this is too close," he murmured. "It's not." His hand lifted, hovering near her waist, waiting. She reached back, placing her hand over his, guiding it to her hip. The contact was electric, not rushed, not desperate, grounded, intentional. Min Jae's breath deepened. "You're choosing this?" "Yes!" His fingers tightened slightly, testing, asking without words. Her head tipped back against his shoulder. "Don't stop." He didn't take her mouth, didn't rush to claim. Instead, he explored her the way he approached everything, methodically, attentively, as if learning her was more important than possessing her. "You're very quiet," he said softly. "I'm listening to my body," she replied. "It finally feels like it belongs to me." His grip steadied, reverent. "I will never take what you haven't already given yourself," he said. The promise was heavier than any vow. Later that night, when she lay beside him, fully clothed, bodies aligned but not entangled, Aaliyah stared at the ceiling, heart racing in a way that felt thrilling instead of terrifying. Min-jae? Yes. If I leave, if I decide to build something entirely my own, will you let me? He turned his head slightly, studying her in the dim light. I would never cage you, he said. But if you stay, it will be because you want me, not because you need me. She smiled faintly. That might be more dangerous. His lips curved, slow and knowing. Yes. Across the city, Terrence Cole sat in a room with no windows and very clear instructions. He would not contact Aaliyah Monroe again. He would not come near her work. He would not speak her name. The cost of forgetting would be high. The cost of remembering would be higher. Back in the quiet apartment, Aaliyah finally slept deeply, her body relaxed against a future that felt chosen, not forced. And for the first time, desire didn't feel like risk. It felt like freedom. Aaliyah woke before dawn, not from fear, but from clarity. The city outside Min-jae's windows was still dark, lights scattered like quiet witnesses. She lay still for a long moment, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing beside her. He had slept without armor, without calculation, one arm resting near but not around her, as if even in sleep he respected the line she had drawn. She turned onto her side and studied him. In daylight, people would see the hospital owner, the silent investor, the man whose presence bent rooms. But here, in the thin hour between night and morning, she saw something else. Discipline honed by survival, restraint forged by consequence. A man who had learned that control meant knowing when not to take. She slipped out of bed quietly and padded to the window, wrapping a robe around herself. For the first time in years, her body felt like a place she lived in, not something she managed. Behind her, the bed shifted. You're awake, Min-jae said, voice low with sleep. Yes. He joined her at the window, standing close but not touching. The city breathed beneath them. Today, he said, I will finish this. She knew what he meant. Terrence. The remaining threads. The loose ends that still tugged at the edges of her life. Aaliyah inhaled slowly. I don't want to disappear. You won't, Min-jae replied. He will. She turned to face him fully. I don't want blood. You won't have it. She searched his face, needing truth, not comfort. Say it, she said. Min-jae met her gaze without flinching. He will be removed from your reach permanently through channels that cannot circle back to you. Relief loosened something tight in her chest. Thank you, she whispered. He inclined his head slightly. You were never weak, Aaliyah. You were simply alone. Later that morning, she went to work. Not hidden, not guarded, just present. Dr. Seo Yoon-hee watched her pass in the corridor, noting the way Aaliyah's shoulders no longer curved inward, the way her eyes met others without apology. The bruises were gone now, faded into memory, but something deeper had shifted. At midday, Han Dae-sung appeared briefly, murmuring quiet instructions to security. No one noticed. No one needed to. By evening, it was done. Min-jae didn't announce it, didn't dramatize it. He simply returned to the apartment and poured her tea. It's finished, he said. She nodded. No questions. They sat together in silence, the weight of finality settling between them, not heavy. Complete. I need to tell you something, Aaliyah said after a while. He looked at her, attentive. I'm not ready to belong to anyone, she said. Not yet. Min-jae didn't interrupt. I want to choose you, she continued, voice steady, but not as a refuge, as a desire. His expression softened, not disappointment, but respect. Then take your time, he said. I will not rush what is meant to stand. She moved closer, resting her hand on his knee. But I do want this. He covered her hand with his own, warm and grounding. So do I. That night, when they finally closed the distance between them, it was unhurried, no desperation, no claiming, just mutual gravity drawing them together. Her voice, low and accented, melting, filled the quiet as she whispered his name. His restraint unraveled slowly, deliberately, as if every movement was a promise kept rather than broken. And when they finally rested together, bodies aligned, breaths shared, Aaliyah understood something fundamental. Love did not have to consume. Protection did not have to imprison. Power did not have to bruise. Weeks later, she moved back into her own apartment. Min-jae did not object. He walked her through the door, placed her bag down himself, then stepped back. "This is yours," he said. She smiled, deep dimples appearing. "And you?" "I am where you invite me." The Wrong Number initiative would be born months later, quietly at first. Aaliyah would use her voice, her presence, her experience to create a bridge for women still hiding in bathrooms, still typing desperate messages with shaking hands. Sometimes the messages would come late at night. Sometimes the number would be wrong, and sometimes the answer would change everything. Because healing, she learned, did not begin with rescue. It began with being seen.